Fiona, how are you doing?
Doing okay, doing okay. How about you?
I've been really looking forward to this.
Yeah,
Just a
so am
chance
I.
to kind of for us to nature play this morning, and that's always fun. So, I'm John Muir Laws. Please call me Jack. Only my fourth grade principal and telemarketers really call me John. Um, the and a few years ago, I met, at least on my screen, I'm seeing you over there. Is it?
You're this way for me, but I
Oh,
can
okay, so it's going
fit.
to be scrambled on different people's screens. So we met each other, and we realized like we share this wonderful love of nature, the joy of then like taking all the craziness we discover and getting it in our journals and using that to enhance the way we think and play with things. And something that's really fun about meeting Fiona for me is that she really, part of our nature journaling process is intentionally being curious. And she took that to 11. She really brought up, in my mind, the importance of that, and that's opened up some doors to me. So you're going to see some of that today. What we're going to be doing is in our journals, we've got journals, right? We are going to be looking at some sort of a phenomenon. And as we do that, we're recording it in our journals. We've got three ways we're going to do that. We've got words. So we're going to be writing words to describe it, right? Like it's hard for me to draw the texture of this, right? So we're going to be using words. And what else will we be doing?
We're using pictures,
Right?
it,
And
diagrams and cross sections and fun things.
With those pictures, we don't have to be pretty, right? So don't worry about pretty pictures. We want to get information that we see onto the piece of paper, right? And if it looks pretty, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great. It's about the way we're thinking. Right. And what's the third trick we're going to use?
Numbers.
So
which scare me. So.
Oh. Okay, I'll hold your hand through this because I have been really kind of number geeking out recently. Yeah, so numbers, it's just another language for describing this beautiful world. Like, so I can, on my banana here, I can count how many sides it has. I can look at it, I can draw a picture of it, but if I actually count, you see those little edges, this banana has 1, 2, 3, 4, it's got 5 sides. So I just counted something. And so we're going to be using, and that's a great, easy example of kind of using numbers in what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And check this out. We'll save that for later. Put my telephone down.
Yes.
So we've got words, pictures, numbers, right? And that's one critical triad we have in our nature journal. Do you want to share the sort of the other triad?
Yes. This is for ways of thinking. So I notice. So basically anything you notice about what you're looking at, like this little pepper that I have, it's green on one side, it's red on the other side. And then the next little part is I wonder. So questions. So why is it green on one side and red on the other side? Why is it shaped like this? I love why questions. But basically anything you wonder. So any questions that come to you, write them down. And then it reminds me of, which is really fun, basically making connections. So saying like, this reminds me of something. So with the banana, like this reminds me of a phone, like, you can talk, right?
Roger that.
Exactly. So that's also really fun. I've had a lot of fun little experiments with, it reminds me of.
Yeah, and those three things together that I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of when we intentionally do that. You'll see, like if you're just doing one of those things, you're just putting down your observations, it'll be interesting, right? But once you put those questions in, it gets so much more fun. And then you put the connections in, it reminds me of, it just got even better. So you'll see that you're journaling, it's okay to do it just with words if you want to. right? It's okay to do it just with observations. But if you use, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, and words, pictures, and numbers, and bam, you put those together, it's next level. And you'll have so much more fun. And so we will be demonstrating that and kind of geeking out on that with you today. And so what you're going to need is something to write and draw with. And what you're going to need is some sort of fruit or vegetable, right? So there's lots of, so right now is time to go raid your pantry and get, or you just need one, but find the one that for you is like, ooh, I'll bet so what's going to happen is you're going to take a look at something that you've been around your entire life. And you're going to actually see new things and wonder new things. You're going to find that a household object that you've just been eaten there's so much more wonder and beauty, even these common things, right? So you're going to need one of these and, something to write with. All right. So what's going to happen is Fiona, what are you using today? What is you're using your pepper?
Yeah, I have a little pepper.
A few months ago, I dissected a little mini, well, it's bigger than this, pumpkin. And I've got one here that has a different shape than the one I was looking at, and it's a different size. And so I'm going to actually double down on pumpkins today. I've explored pumpkins before. I'm going to do pumpkins again. And I know that because I'm looking at a new thing, I'm going to make new discoveries. So even though I've looked at pumpkins before, even though I've dissected and diagrammed pumpkins before, I know that today I'm going to make some new pumpkin discoveries because I'm just alive and I'm paying attention. And the amount of stuff that we can discover and wonder is infinite, right? So let's get everybody started here. What you want to do is just take your little vegetable or fruit friend, and you are going to start by just observing it, noticing about it. And what you want to do is initially you're looking at it, and if you just stare at it, very quickly our brains just kind of go numb. They go like, ugh. All right. And so to avoid that, what Fiona and I will often do is we will talk to the things we're looking at. And so
we're not crazy, we promise.
Well, maybe a little, but in that good way, not the creepy way, not the spooky way, but the fun way, right? And so what I do is I say those observations out loud. I say my notices out loud. I say my wonders, and it reminds me of. So just start. Let's just sort of start with maybe a minute or so of everybody doing I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of out loud with whatever you've got. And at some point, your brain will go like, okay, I've got it, right? There's nothing else to see here. When you get that feeling of your brain saying, I'm done, just kind of go like, oh, but there's actually an infinite number of things that I could do. That's just my brain kind of going like, oh, you can shut off now. And just push through that and see if you can notice or wonder or make connections about things after the point which your brain usually says, you're done. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to mute myself so that I can do this out loud. I want every once in a while, I'm going to check out the screen to make sure you're going like this. Because if you're sitting there like this, or you're sitting there like this, like you're in trouble, right? Really, everybody out loud. Here we go. I'm muted. Is everybody ready? We can unmute ourselves again. All right. Um, just Fiona, as you were doing that, did anything really for you start to jump out as like, this is an interesting direction with your little friend?
Two little things. One, all these like ridges and dents and stuff are just fascinating to me. I don't know what would have caused them or why they are the way they are. It's just such a strange shape. And then the top of it almost reminds me of like green duck feet, you know, like webbed toes,
Oh,
which is
awesome. It
how
reminds
it
me of.
reminds me of. It looks like little duck feet. Anyway,
Oh, that's really cool.
did you come up with anything cool?
So yeah, what I had is I noticed that, on the previous pumpkin that I had done, there was a clear sort of 5-pointed shape around here. This one is kind of like 4.5. So one of them is not as clear. And
Okay.
I started wondering about what is the relationship between these points on the outside and what's going on the inside. And we will be going into inside our things.
Yes.
So I'm going to, I was thinking that I will actually draw some lines on this before I cut it open
And
and see
Cool.
sort of tracking where those little marks are. And so I want to see if there's some relationship between those. So that was my big question. Also, mine has this little target in the back.
Oh,
And
fun.
I was wondering about the relationship between that and the flower that at one point was this. I'm thinking that this is like the base of the flower that once was sticking out here, right? And so now we're going to start getting these things on our piece of paper. So first we want to pay attention to the phenomenon. Then we get all those observations, those questions and things down from here onto paper. You can only hold so much in your little head for a little while. Pretty soon you're gonna be forgetting stuff. And if you want to like get a lot of information, our brains can't handle that. So we're going to be taking this, we're going to be transferring the stuff that is in your mind, right? We're getting that from in your mind to on the paper. And then that's going to free up our brain for then noticing other sorts of things. So let's take a look at kind of how we might start doing that. Boopy-doo. And all right, I've got a little journal here. Come down on it. And maybe it looks like this is a horizontal screen. So I'm going to turn my thing sideways just so that I have more screen visible for everybody. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, you can start with writing or you can start with drawing or you can start with counting. But I'm going to start with drawing. And what I will often intentionally do is think of what views of this before I cut it open. What views of this on the outside are going to give me the most information about it. So I might do a top view, I might do a side view, and or it could be a 3/4 view like that. Right? So it could be top view, side 3/4 view, any of those. So instead of just one drawing of this, think of a couple of views. These don't have to be finished pretty pictures, but we want to get that information down about it. One way of doing that is you can kind of lightly trace around something, even though this thing is a big circle, I can lightly kind of go like, oh, this thing is roughly this big, right? And so let's all do that right now. And I'm going to ask everybody who's watching to start just recording visually or with words, eventually with both, and pictures, what you are seeing. Don't worry about making a pretty picture. Start on the outside. Then we're going to be moving in. No one view of any object really defines its shape. So I don't want to get kind of too wrapped around the axle about one drawing here. If you want to use color on your page, you can. Another thing you can do is you can just use words to describe what you see. I'm going to say that this is bright orange. With small yellow spots. That are in rows. I'm going to ask, what are the yellow spots? Wonder, with those yellow spots, both what causes them and what their function is. So those are, two, questions about the yellow spots that kind of take my brain in different directions. So one is a kind of, how did this form sort of a thing? The other is more of a, what is the function kind of a question. Whatever kind of questions come up to you, those are worthwhile. Here I'm seeing like this little woody stem on this pumpkin. And I'm wondering about, why is it that some plants have these really soft stems. What is it about pumpkin stems that makes them more so woody?
So I'm noticing that on this pepper, there's one side that's larger than the other. It kind of has this bump on this one side, and I'm noticing that that's the side that's green. So I'm wondering if there's any correlation between the color and this strange kind of thing that it's got going on. So I'll be interested to see what's in it. But yeah, that's kind of where my mind's going right now. And just wondering about why one side is red and one side is green. Did this sunlight hit here and not here? If so, was it facing out? Was this the side that's facing into the plant? Like, how did that work? Anyway, those are the kind of things I'm thinking about.
So Fiona is comes up with some of the most fascinating questions about things that she sees. I want everybody to take a look at her page as she's going here. So she's noticing, see that little wow box? So she's noticing the things that are surprises to her as she is observing real time, right? And so this is something that her brain wouldn't have made up, she didn't expect. So it gets like, oh, she's kind of underscoring this observation to kind of get her brain to notice, like, this is a detail that I would not have noticed, I would not have seen just on my own. And then there is there's a curiosity chain coming off the bottom of that. So look at just the sort of the structures of these things. So she makes a discovery. Wow, here's this thing that I'm noticing. Because she is both drawing it and writing out those details, it's going to stick in her head better. And could you walk us through that curiosity chain on the bottom there?
Here?
Yeah, that one right there, or that one to the right. Either one of those that you think is the most interesting. But just point out what you're doing, how you're kind of linking questions. So questions are leading to questions and linking in her brain.
I'm kind of actually bouncing back and forth between these two because they're related. I'm gonna wonder here and then come back to here. Just wondering because I'm looking at the color in both of them for different reasons. So I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. So right now I'm working on this one. I just drew a little diagram of what it might have looked like on the plant if the green side was facing into the bush and the red side was facing out toward the sun.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, because that line of thinking, that's really interesting. I love the way you're thinking of that. Keep going. I love this.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I am with this right now. Right now, then jumping over to here, such a strange shape. One side is larger than the other. Why? Does it have anything to do with the color? So I'm going to add to that, or is it just a correlation?
Right. So notice what she's doing there. She's saying, she's wondering, does this have something to do with sort of the orientation? She says, or she's also giving herself room in her thinking for other possible explanations for what she's seeing. So there's a distinction in what Fiona documents her direct observations and the things that she is wondering about, these sort of like possible observations versus explanations for things. So she's with those observations, like, you can count number of sides on something. For an explanation, you're saying, like, is it this way because of how it might be oriented on the plant, or could that just be, is that causing that, or is it just randomly correlated with it? So that's some interesting scientific thinking that I'm seeing. What is that little inset down there that you're putting in right now?
I don't know if you can see it. There's tiny little spots on part of the pepper, and I'm wondering what they're from. I haven't even started a question chain at all, but I was just doing a little inset of that. There are these little dots on the side of the pepper. So I'm wondering what's up with those.
Oh, so as you are, so something that I often do is I will look for at other people's observations for my inspiration. So Fiona's starting to talk about like her pepper has, you know, it's this side has got this side has got this. And I was thinking, oh, it's too bad I've got this piece of this fruit here that is not, it doesn't have different things on different sides. I'd already put some observations about, I don't know if you can see these, it has little yellow spots on it. But the minute Fiona started talking about that, check this out. I'm going to roll my little guy over. This side doesn't have all those clear spots. So one side, so mine actually does have a zone with more spots on one side of it, and the other side doesn't have my little yellow spots. So I'm going to draw in the Y yellow spots only on this side. Yeah. So notice how Fiona's observations prompted me to think differently about what I was observing, and I'm putting in an observation directly relating to that. And we haven't even gotten inside these yet. I'm looking at it from the top. Yeah, it's about half and half.
Also, I don't worry about my spelling, so apologize in advance if you cannot read my writing. I am not that great at spelling, just to let you guys know.
And I celebrate my spelling creativity. Your journal is not a place where you need to worry about anything like having to spell something correctly, having to make a pretty picture of something. It's what most important thing is to be getting our thoughts and ideas down. So we're not worried about whether it looks good or not. We're not worried about whether it is spelled right or not. We are interested in those observations. While you're drawing there, I am going to draw blue lines connecting to the points of my little pumpkin so that I can see how those match up with the structures on the inside. Is there a correlation? Is there a connection? I don't know yet. Oops.
So Jack, I think we have about 15 minutes left for the drawing portion of this workshop.
And we haven't opened these up yet.
I'm gonna quick hit this with some color, just so.
All right. I am getting ready to start to open mine up. So as we are thinking about looking on the inside, I'm already thinking about what is the relationship between the structures that I see on the outside of this and what I see on the inside. And so on mine, I have drawn where there are sharp corners on this stem, I've drawn a hard line out, and then I've got a dashed line on the other side, and I've got two of them because I'm really not sure where that would be. I'm sort of seeing some kind of bump-ish in that direction. I don't know, it's something like that. This one maybe is a little bit more reinforced. I'll give that a bigger dotted line, but it's not as strong as the other. And what I want to think about now, is this going to be more interesting for me to cut this way through the top? Or is it going to be more interesting to cut it this way through the side? So if you're thinking about, you know, here's another little peepo. These squashes and things, technically this is called a peepo, is this type of fruit. If I cut it through this way and open it like a book, that's going to be different than slicing it this way and opening it this way. I can do both, but I want to think of which one is going to be the most exciting and interesting to me. I want to do that one first, because as the more I cut it, sometimes that moves things around inside. It gets a little bit more difficult to kind of see things like what angle on this is going to be the most interesting. Do you want to cut your banana? Usually we think of cutting bananas this way, right? But you also could cut your banana this way. So you can cut things in non-conventional ways, and you want to think of which slice through is going to reveal the internal structure in the way that you are the most curious about. If you are using knives at home, please be careful. You want to count before you go. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fingers. You want to end up with 10 at the end. That's the style points for ending up with the same number. Don't cut towards your hand like that. Using a cutting board is a much better way to go. So for my little friend here, I'm going to hold it on either side so that I can then put the knife under my hand and cut this way. That way I'm not going to accidentally cut into my hand. An interesting sort of side note, in emergency rooms, if somebody comes in with a slice across their palm, right like this, they come into an emergency room, the emergency doctors go like, oh, how are the bagels? It's called the bagel cut because people cutting bagels regularly slice into their hand with a sharp knife. Anyway, so I'm not going to make the bagel cut. There we go. Slice yours in the way you're most interested in. And now I open it up. Okay, so this, oh, Fiona, check this out. Check this out.
Oh, wow.
Do you see this? What I'm going to hold this up here. You see what is going on right here?
Uh-huh.
I think. Oh, see this, the one that the pumpkin that I opened earlier. Oh, I'm just a quick observation. I'm seeing liquid coming out in a ring right around the outside edge from little points in the edge. Now they're blurring together, but they were coming out as just little droplets right along the edge, outer edge, and now they're kind of coalescing. But I think I'm seeing that some of these are sprouting. Some of these, look at this. Look at this.
Oh, so cool.
Oh, I totally did not expect that. Oh,
Wow.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
That's insane. That's so crazy that it would sprout inside. I wouldn't think that it would.
Oh, man.
That's so cool.
See, this is what Fiona and I, as we're exploring things, we're looking for surprises. We want to be surprised by the world, and then we let that just wash over us. And look at how much material has come out of there. Like this looks like, so where did the mass of this whole sprout come from, right? The mass of this is greater than the mass of inside a pumpkin seed. And look at all the mass of the material that has come out from this little pumpkin seed. Okay, so this, I'm getting very, very excited. So I'm going to be able to dig out some of these. But before I really kind of go wild on doing that, I want to be careful and draw the structure and sort of answer my initial question. So my initial question is there a relationship between this line? Let's see where it comes in. That's coming in over here. Next one here. So like the middle of these, the corners of these are not at all lining up with the bumps on the stem. So I see the bumps on the stem don't seem to correlate for me with the pattern that I see on the inside. I didn't expect that. I expected that to be a tighter little correlation.
Kind of just a quick little thing. I just cut my pepper like this. So cut it like that. And this little bump on the side, there's kind of a little wall here. There's almost no seeds in it, which is really weird. I don't know why that is. But it's kind of cool. All on the other two, there's little dents on the side, and on this one, it actually curves out, which is different from the other two, which is kind of weird, which I think is what created that like little, wait, there's how it fits together. It's created this weird little bump on the side that it like bowed out for whatever reason. So that's kind of cool.
That is. So you see, Fiona and I are not experts on, plant structure, and, but what we're doing here is we are letting this phenomenon surprise us. Notice how, we're both kind of we're intentionally looking for the things that I did not expect to see. And that's huge. The things that I didn't expect to see. And by then documenting those, so Fiona's got those bumps, and some of them, those little ridges kind of being a groove on the outside, and there's one that's a bump. And so we're expecting what Fiona's discovering is that how should I say it? The pepper in her mind is different than the pepper in her hand. And if she was not journaling, she would not be able to really see and notice that. Right? What your brain would do is it would very quickly just sort of say, yeah, this is what I expected to see. But she's intentionally noticing how is it different than what she expected to see? All right, and look at this. So I've got in the structure on the underside of mine, I have these zones here where the seeds are, these 3 zones with seeds on it. It's split with 2 sides. So there's 6 zones with seeds in 2 groups, in 3 groups of 2s. And then there are these triangular spaces between them. And that is, into those triangular spaces is where these root tubes are moving. So into those spaces in between those, that's where those little root tubes are moving. Oh, that's so cool. So on my little pumpkin cross section here, I don't have to actually do a full portrait of the entire structure because it's repeated several times. But what I want to do is make sure that I am showing the structure of this. So one side of this, I'm going to make, I often will think of this not as a drawing, but as a diagram. Just using the terminology a diagram makes me feel much more like it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a pretty picture. I want to emphasize the structure of it, what I'm learning.
And Jack, looks like we have about 10 minutes left in the hour.
Oh. And 15 minutes of that 10 minutes is our question and answer session, right?
Our question and answer session can go over for as long as people like. So I would say we have 10 minutes to, finish this journaling.
Okay. So why don't we why don't we should we start to have there been people been writing in some interesting questions?
I think even better, people are very much deeply engaged in their own observations and drawings. I see a lot of heads down. I see a lot of looking at their paper.
Oh, that's exactly what we want. Um, and but just for the format of this was this is also the time right now is when we would be taking some questions from the audience.
Yes, the chat questions are also open. I think that it feels right to kind of finish these initial observations, and then we can open up for conversation if folks would like. I know for myself, I'd be curious to hear what other people noticed, and we can take the time to open mics and maybe even do some community thinking about some of our observations.
Oh, that sounds like fun. So what we're doing now is, folks, we'd like to invite you to, people to unmute themselves?
Yeah, that sounds fine. If anyone has a question or an exciting observation or wonderment you want to share with yours, please do so in the chat or over the microphone. And again, what I've been really learned a lot from
Wait,
there's no wrong questions, there's no wrong observations.
just one cool thing is that the red edge here is thinner than the green edge here, which I just noticed.
Ooh.
Which makes no sense to me. Why would it get smaller as it turns red as opposed to, I don't understand, but just thought I'd throw that out there. Kind of fun.
Or is it that thinner tissues ripen faster as an alternate?
True,
Because
yeah.
maybe a light or warmth could get into that area more quickly.
Right, therefore it would ripen faster because of the sunlight, right.
Alternatively, so what Fiona and I will often do when we're doing these could it be's, what you see Fiona and I doing right now, we call this could it be, right? Because we don't know the answer, but we are coming up with possible, plausible explanations. And so the danger of doing that is that you say something that like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then what your brain will do goes like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Therefore, this question is answered, right? And instead of doing that, what we do is we come up with, all right, that's a possible answer. And then we intentionally get more possible answers. We say, well, like, what else could it be? What else could that be? And we'll get those other could it be statements out there. And that helps us sort of not just sort of stop our thinking at the first pretty explanation that raises its head. Let's see, maybe the thick part is getting, because it's thicker, it's getting more sort of juice from the plant. And so it is able to continue growing longer. And then any parts that are thinner start drying out faster, because they're not getting they're not getting nutrients. They're not being as supplied with nutrients from the plant. So there's a comment in the chat that I thought would be perfect to address to you, Fiona, about saying like, I have a feeling like I need to answer my questions. And so then if I'm not going to be answering those, what is the value of, I don't want to put those down in my journal. And as you have really thought through that part of journaling, and I was wondering if you could share your thoughts about that.
Yes, people ask me that all the time because basically what I do is I just write these huge chains of questions and I don't worry about the answers at all. Sometimes if I come to a really interesting question, I'm like, ooh, if I ask this person or if I look this up, I can find a specific answer. And then that will spark me to want to ask more questions about that answer once I get it. So I'm very selective about what answers I decide to look up. If I felt the need to answer all of my questions, I would ask only as many as I could answer. And it wouldn't, I go to a new place when I ask interesting questions and I don't worry about the answers. It takes my brain to a different place than if I just ask the questions that I could answer or use the internet or a book to look up. So I find that it's really freeing to just ask questions, and you'll get to crazy cool places that you wouldn't have otherwise if you hadn't just asked those questions and not worried about the answers. So that's my thinking on it. Yeah.
And so what that does then is it frees you to ask those questions, because you actually don't have to, because very often what she's doing in these curiosity chains is she is getting to the question that is behind the question.
Right.
Right. And she doesn't need to have answered all the questions before that to get there. And so these more interesting, richer, more nuanced questions, those are lurking behind the first questions that comes out. So it's like when you first sort of notice like, oh, there are spots on it. And then you observe more. And then you notice like, oh, there's a pattern with these spots. And oh, they're only in this section. So with your observations, you've gone deeper with that. And the same thing happens with questions, right? So she's going to ask those questions to get to the questions back here, to get to the further you go into this, the more interesting those questions get. And so sometimes she'll just, she'll ask this and she'll sometimes do these hypotheticals with it. Like, if this, right? So she's asked a question and then comes up with an answer of it. Like, well, if this, then why this, right? So that's what you're doing, is you're not having to answer the questions, but you're hypothetically sort of then springboarding those off of those to get to other things. The questions on their own are valuable, independent of the answers. And this kind of freaks a lot of people out. So do you want to unpack part of that for people?
Yeah, just that you don't need the answers all the time, that you can get to cool places by just asking questions. And it's so freeing. It's so fun to know that there are infinite questions that I could ask right now. Right. And just asking them as they come to you. And if you come to a really cool one and you really want to find the answer to that, go do some research and have some fun. And I do that often. And once I find that answer, I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And I'll go write it in my journal. And then I'll say, well, with this answer, what other questions can I ask? So the questions themselves are important. They're not just the way to the answer. They are themselves important.
Right. And when Fiona gets a question in her head, everybody's, the feeling of being curious about something, that feeling is a slosh of dopamine in your brain. So curiosity is a dopamine dependent neurochemical response. So in the presence of this neurotransmitter, your brain starts working differently. Okay, so you are going to be able to stick with something longer. Like, check out Amaya over there. She's still on the outside of her thing, like kind of going like, well, these dots are over here, but then they notice these spots and these ones are deeper. Like, now I'm going to look at the depth of these things all over here, and like these ones are big. Right. So the curiosity gets your brain to kind of like, oh, let's stick with this a little bit longer. And then you start to see more and kind of get into it more. So it like sucks you into the gravity well of wonder. Right. And also your ability to remember things is better when you are in a state of curiosity, not just about the things that you got curious about, but about everything else that's going on here. So there's been research that's going on about where you kind of stimulate people's curiosity about this, and what we find is that their memory of the things that were not salient and important or interesting to them, when they are in those curious states, of those things that don't matter as much to them, those get carried along on the wagon of your curiosity, because you've got this dopamine brain now. Your brain works better when you're curious. Right. So you can just say like, I think I'd like some dopamine now. I think I'm gonna go do some curiosity, right? And then this starts happening, right?
Yeah, I get it.
It's fun. It's so much more fun when you get curious about something. Like, what's up with penguins? Pumpkins. What's up with pumpkins sprouting inside the pumpkin? Does then the whole thing rot, and there's seeds are now in this sort of mushy matrix of, is that the purpose of the big pumpkin? Is to create, is it a safe place to start germinating? Like, how does this work out in the field? That's so cool, right? And you get yourself curious, and then you've got, the answers aren't the things. You will get some answers. There's nothing wrong with answers, right? But you also notice what Fiona was talking about. When she does get an answer, is then she's looking for the next little, what can she hook onto that? Okay, that's a building block, right? And you could stop right there, but she then will go like, okay, what is a question that I can answer off of this new platform? And you're climbing higher and going out further, out on branches of the neural tree that you would never get to play on, never get to swing on. And that's fun.
That's cool. Cool. Very good. I enjoyed that.
Do we have any other questions or observations from our participants, or anyone else want to share out?
Hey, do you want to split that banana in 3?
Oh yeah, the 3 inside the 5.
The 3.
The 3 carpals inside the banana. When you start kind of mushing around in here, that you think,
yeah,
that you think like, if there are 5 sides, there should be 5 chambers inside. But then you get into your banana. That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't that fun? Like, what? And notice that both numbers on the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah. Coincidence, perhaps? Right? So yeah, there's the 3 hiding inside the 5. The 3 carpals of the banana. Now, in a wild sort of proto banana, inside here would be a bunch of really hard black seeds that you could break a tooth on.
I want a banana right now. I don't have any in my refrigerator.
That is that's some perfect banana moment going on right here.
Perfect point of banananess.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we couldn't.
It's so appealing.
There you go. With that banana moment, that banana pun. Oh, we see one.
Sure. So this is still work in progress. I can't wait to get in and play with these guys. Look at those. Reminds me of bean sprouts. And look, so I now want to go put these into cups and see if I can grow these from these seeds here. So what's going to happen once we leave this call is I'm going to be drawing these beans in and around the edge, adding more written notes. It reminds me of questions about what I'm seeing here. It is so cool to discover these unexpected wonders. And those are around us all the time if we can just get ourselves to slow down and pay attention.
Perfect parting words. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Slow down, pay attention. And if any folks want to stick around
Hey,
for one more
Sam?
minute.
Sam, can we let Fiona share?
Yes.
Okay, so this is my page. I drew it life size here, made a little mark of where I cut it for this cross section, drew it from the top. Yeah, asked some questions. I'm probably gonna fill out the rest of this page after the call, ask a few more questions, maybe dissect it a few more ways. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It was really fun.
This is cool. Now, tell us about that little wait moment there.
Yeah, this was when I realized that the red edge is thinner than the green edge.
All right, so it's like her full metacognitive process is revealed in these notes and comments, right? So metacognition is thinking about how you're thinking. So when she's putting in those wows and waits and then kind of and daisy chaining ideas, you are seeing a mind map of Fiona's thinking as she's going. And that does several things. One, we can see her thinking, but it also reveals those ideas more strongly to her own brain, So it's how can you get your brain to kind of grapple with what you're thinking about, what you're interacting about. This is just so dynamic. You are seeing, this is her brain on paper. Yeah, what were you going to say, Fiona?
It was also kind of cool because I had drawn it all the same width all the way around. So I actually had to go back and change it and make it thinner when I noticed that on this. So I actually drew it the same width all the way around. And then I realized it was thinner. I was like, no, wait. And I went back and erased it and made it thinner. So that.
That's cool. That's cool. And it's interesting how it, the red zone goes over, past one of those septums. So it's not, the red zone isn't just one section between, just one section of this, but it overlaps. It goes halfway through one to 3/4 of the way through another. That's really neat.
Yeah, anyway, so that's kind of my page. Put a little metadata in the corner.
Tell us about the metadata.
Yeah, so I have these little things, I call them weather boxes. So it has the date at the top. I break it into 3. It has the date at the top, then the weather, and I have little codes, little 2-letter and 3-letter codes for different, whether it's cold or cool or perfect or warm or hot, etc. So today's cold, but it's sunny and breezy. So one little little spiral is breezy, 2 little spirals is windy, etc. I have a whole little system. And this is where I am. So it's date, weather, and where I am. And if the time is significant, if it's like sunset or something like that, I'll put the time if it's significant to the drawing.
Oh, that is nice. That is really good. That little metadata she's talking about there, that takes what she's doing and just turns it from, here's some notes about something, to scientific data. All of her observations end up georeferenced and date stamped in this way. That's really fun.
Yeah, so all my pages have these little boxes somewhere, whether it's on the side, etc.
Could I get you just to flip back in a few other pages in that journal, because something that she does that's really interesting, you can't quite see here, is that those red arrows, she actually question marks, she's got all of her questions actually color coded. Here, you notice that all the questions and the thoughts about the Tule elk are in brown. The ones about the are blue, and the ones about the white-tailed kite are green. So she's actually color coding her thinking about this on the page. You couldn't really see that on the other page because they were all red, but that's just another kind of interesting, really cool metacognitive thing going on. Windy that day.
Very windy. Yeah. And here's some owls. and these little metadata boxes around my page. This was kind of cool. This is when I noticed that their ears actually are like practically part of their eyebrows as opposed to come off their head. I had never noticed that before. I had always thought that they were like set back, like their little ear tufts were like this, and they're actually like this. So I just realized that. And so this little guy is the first owl that I drew with that in mind. And I was like, that looks more accurate than these ones. So these ones were drawn first. And then I realized this. I've been looking at great horned owls for years and I've never noticed that before.
It's so cool. The more we look, the more there is to see. This world is infinite, filled with mystery, beautiful. That's fun.
There's some other little things. But anyway, yeah, with the little metadata boxes.
Metacognition, everybody. Metacognition in your face right here. That's so cool to see. All right.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Oh, Sam is back. And again, we've shared some resources in the chat, and we'll also send a follow-up email with more resources. But thank you again to Jack and Fiona, not just for sharing your process of nature journaling, but your process of thinking and maintaining curiosity with that curiosity is active. It won't just come to you, which is a big takeaway from this for me. And thank you to everyone who joined and who shared. Do you have one send away thought, Jack? Is that a nope?
Yeah,
Okay.
just so this what you're seeing here today, this is like oh my gosh, wow, how do you do that? Like, how does Amaya do that? How does oh my gosh, right? This is not a gift that any of us were given. It's a skill that we've developed by doing it on a regular basis. So you start doing this on a regular basis too. This same sort of visual thinking strategies, these will become part of what you automatically do. And it will change the way your brain is wired. It will change the way your brain thinks. And it's much more fun. It's much more generative ideas. It allows you to go deeper with what you choose to go to. It is the most powerful brain hack that we know of. You think about every scientist that you can name who has contributed to our world and culture. They all keep journals like this. Same with the musicians, same with the writers, right? The people who aren't keeping a notebook, we forget their names over time, right? So this is your brain on paper, and you will expand your brain just by starting to deliberately do this on a regular basis. You can do this. It's a skill that you learn, not a gift that you're given. If anybody wants to learn more, every week I am teaching free nature journaling classes. Go to johnmuirlaws.com. You can learn more about it there, or there's other resources and things to do it. But the most important thing to do is just sort of get yourself that book and you just start, just go through more pages, more pages. Don't worry about pretty pictures. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about art, any of those things. This is your brain on paper. Have fun. It's your brain. What are you going to do with it today? Hey, Fiona, I really miss you. And I'm looking forward to playing. You too, Amaya. We're going to get together. We're going to celebrate. We're going to have a party when this crazy COVID thing is done. We'll get ourselves some shots and go hang out and geek out on nature.
Yes.
All right.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day with your eyes wide open.
Oh, this is the part where we're supposed to end. That was the cue to end, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. Hey, everybody. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.